Okay. You're checking this out from the beginning. It's been a while since I've gone live or anything. I've got some work to do. As you can see, I've got lots of pianos that I need to put together. Here's one I own, and we've got a new soundboard and things. This is the one I'm working on tonight. Just putting on finishing touches on regulation and voicing on this. Probably some tuning too. And then I've got several others in the shop that need to be put together so I can get paid on them. But I was getting tired, getting a little bit run down, and so I thought I would turn the video on to kind of motivate me to keep going. So it's going to be really relaxed here, but if you're here to hang out and learn, that's great. I'll check the questions every once in a while, maybe like on the hour and a half hour, so about 7 o'clock, 7:30 my time. But anyway, this is a Model B. It's a good sound. It got touched up by a master finisher who works a lot of times in the shop here. And as an afterthought, the customer, the refinisher said, you might want to check it over with the technician, see if it needs any work done to it while we have it out of the home. And so I took a look at it. The dampers weren't working. So in this case, this piano has what they call a Teflon action. It's from that era. The serial number's 418. Starts with 418 anyway. So it's right in that time when they had these Teflon bushings that the main problem with them is they can either be too light, too tight, or too loose after production because of the wood expanding and contracting around those things. And this is just the joints, what I'm talking about. The action centers is another word for joints that we use. So anyway, the dampers weren't working at all. The felts were all messed up. So we repainted the heads, put new damper felts on. I've been regulating the dampers, getting them kind of fine-tuned. Just did a rough tuning on it. We've been doing a lot of pre-regulation kind of things. We shaped the hammers on this, so they basically look like new hammers. They weren't that old, but they had some strange wear on them that wasn't helping the sound any. So they've been hardened a lot, I can tell. They've been lacquered a lot, not by me, just previously. So basically, we're getting this action adjusted so that it works right. So I've just kind of invited you in, and I'm gonna I'll kind of maybe talk about what I do a little bit, but otherwise just kind of hanging out. So right now I have to decide what I want to do, but I'm not gonna do anything about it yet. I just put out a kind of a shorter video, just published one, showing that this piano has had new action parts put on it, new hammer flanges, hammers, and whip-ins or repetitions. The shanks on here and the whip-ins or repetitions are not genuine Steinway. I think they're Renner, but I'm not positive. And they opted to buy a type that has a spring that kind of lifts the weight of these whip-ins or repetitions and helps them essentially be lighter in the mechanism to overcome this being too heavy of a piano. And but the problem is the tails of these hammers are coming down and clicking on these springs. But I haven't even adjusted where the hammers are going to sit at rest yet, the blow distance. So I'm going to do that first before I take any measures to, just to really determine is it really clicking once I get everything adjusted the way I want. So I'm kind of just going through some regulation steps right now on it, and kind of give you an idea where it's at. I think a lot of what's going to go on tonight that might be worth watching a little bit later here, because I've got to finish some regulation, but is the voicing. So the hammers were pretty hard, and this is kind of our sound. A real metallic sound. thuddy sounding. I'm not going to be addressing that. It's not within the scope of the job. So I'm just going to try and make it sound as good as I can. That being said, the piano has great sustain. I love, everyone bags the Steinways that were made during the era of, I don't know if this is accurate to say, but when CBS owned them, is that right? But when they were putting out the Teflon bushings and so forth, people bag on those pianos, say, oh, you know, they weren't doing a very good job. But the bellies of those pianos, the soundboard and the sustain that comes out, I love it. I mean, it has sustain to burn. And this is what the Una Corda sounds like. Yeah, just really raw, really. It's a little bit just too strong, strident, metallic, and so I'll be working on that with the voicing. But first, I got to finish the regulation. So I was just adjusting. Unfortunately, I can't take the effort here by myself of bringing in close-ups and things. So you just have to take my word for what I'm doing on a lot of this. But next thing I'm going to do is find where I set my tool. There it is. So my tool. This is a great adjustment tool. I think Yamaha design originally. This might be actual Yamaha tool. But I'm adjusting the part that lifts the hammer, the jack. I'm adjusting its position front to back. And I can't remember where I left off. I remember I was going this direction. And that's when I ran into the clicking. And honestly, I've been burning the candle at both ends trying to get all these pianos put together. They get bottlenecked a lot of times in the refinishing process. And then what happens then is customers get kind of anxious to get their piano back, and they all just kind of seem to end up in my lap at the same time, despite efforts to make it otherwise. So, but it's kind of cool to do a lot of work, you know, this kind of work in a row. But me and the kids and the wife are trying to take some time off this week, and so not this week, this month. Kind of a fall break, and so I'm just needing to make sure that we get things done before we are able to do that. The only reason I have not been broadcasting lives was just to be able to be faster, a little more efficient at the work. I need cash flow to keep the business running, and so I just kind of nose to the grindstone mode. And just thought I would take a little break on the videos and things. But I do like doing it. I like putting the information out there for people. Seems like there are indeed those who appreciate it and are into it. So let's see. So no planned agenda here tonight as far as the video is concerned. My plan here for this piano is to finish it and finish the regulation, which has mostly been done already. Key height's been determined, keys leveled, how far the keys are going down. For the most part, it's done, except for the black notes. We have to refine that a little later. So now we're just prepping to set what's called blow distance, which is the distance between the hammers and the strings at rest. And in order, on a grand piano, these parts don't rest on anything. They actually are, they kind of float up. They're just suspended in a way on this part closer to the key, which is called the jack. So I need to set the position of that and everything before we continue. Also need a tool called a capstan wrench. And this is the main tool that's used to make this blow distance adjustment on a grand piano usually, unless it's a different type, but this goes into a hole. And you picture if you've seen the pirate ships in the movies where they're walking around the capstan, they've got a pole through it and they're turning around, walking around it, trying to raise a sail or pull an anchor in or what have you. That's what these capstan screws look like if you've never seen them. But anyway, I just had to make sure that was raised up somewhat, just where it's suspended, so I can actually see where it's gonna, where the position is here. I have a hard time describing when someone says, you know, what does it mean to regulate a piano? I don't have a real good, succinct way. At least I don't think I do. Maybe I just always feel awkward describing it, but I usually say something like there's about 6 or 7 adjustments that need to be done to each key for the timing and distances for the parts for it to feel right and work right, and it takes time to adjust all those, a lot of time. Okay, so I've adjusted the jacks under the knuckle here that lifts the hammer front to back. I've put their resting position right where I want it, where it's an optimal lifting point. Now I need to make sure, but what I want to do before is there's too much friction on these flanges. I'm going to do a little diagnostic lubrication to see how effective it is. I already did it. I used acetone to see if these were Steinway flanges, because Steinway will use a Teflon impregnated Teflon liquid that they drip into those joints, and when you put acetone on it, it solves it and redistributes it and makes it this really free if it's too tight. It didn't work on this piano, so these are not the Steinway flanges, clearly, but they're too tight. I can just lift one kind of almost all the way up and it stays. It shouldn't stay there. So this lubricant is just, it's called Pro Lube, industry lubricant, and that freed it right up. The question is, how long lasting is that on this piano? Now see, look, I put it at that same position and it falls free. That's what I want. It'd be nice if it was just like these flanges got a little bit of time and gunk in there somehow or whatever, just enough to bind them up, and that this lubricant will keep it working great. Let's see. In any case, you know, I don't know, people may not like hearing this, but sometimes the scope of a job doesn't allow you to do everything that you might otherwise want to do. There are budgets and so forth. And this piano was in pretty bad shape with the regulation, voicing, and the dampers. So we're making a drastic improvement on it. So what I'm doing, what I'm saying with all this is I'm justifying putting this lubricant on these flanges in the hopes that it will be long-lasting enough to where at least, even if every year you had to hit it with lubricant again a certain time of year or something, if they got a little much friction on them, that would be okay with me. That if you wanted to permanently make sure that you got rid of the friction, you need to repin these flanges, and that just was not in that wasn't in the bill this time around. And I don't think it's so bad that it's a game over if if this isn't as long lasting as I would hope. It plays fine. Like I didn't even notice just playing the piano. I didn't say to myself, "Oh, this feels heavy or sluggish or like there's too much friction." It's just borderline. And now they're all free. Now they're not getting stuck up there. So let's just see where that takes us. And I'm doing that because I want to see how it behaves with these springs. I push the key, goes in a check, I release a little bit, they pop up because there's a spring under here that pops So it resets, it just pushes the hammer and the back of the key away from each other so things can reset. And it looks good. The springs are acting quite strong, which is fine for me right now. Okay, so now the whole point of the piano is, well, one of the whole points of the action of the piano is that you can play the note and then you can play it again, repeat it, right? It resets itself very quickly. And that's part of what we're trying to achieve with the regulation, make sure that's working properly. So the next adjustment to make sure that it can reset is I can set this part that the hammer's resting on, and I want the weight of this part right here to be shared between this beam right here and this, which is the jack, this post. It should rest on both of those, but not so heavily that the jack can't reset and return. So I'm going to just make sure that we're where we want to be with that. And if it's not, if what happens is if the weight isn't shared, then when I do that capstan wrench and I set this blow distance, it doesn't fall in the same place each time, so it's not a stable adjustment then. So I'm making all these adjustments so that blow distance, that distance from the hammer to the strings at rest, will be stable. That if you've done any regulation, you'll know that if you just cut, I remember when I was starting out, I was like, oh yeah, I follow step A, B, and C, and I do this, and I have this great nifty tool, and so it should work out. And then you all come to find out, it's not working out so well because there are little tricks to it, such as this adjustment right here, getting it just right. Usually this one here where the jack can return back under quickly is usually pretty close to being right if it's been regulated before. And I know you can't see this up close. It's just not a day for me to do that, to be able to do that for you. This is just more of a hangout, and if you haven't been exposed to it, I'm running my mouth off a lot just about what I'm doing, just so that you can get some exposure here. Okay. So if this was really extreme, what I'm doing is I'm changing the height of this beam. So if I lower it too much, then all the weight of this hammer is on the jack. And what will happen then is the jack can't get back under after it's played. And so you basically have a note that won't repeat. And you can get that also if there's just friction problems. Excuse me, I'm getting over a thing here. Nothing is better than when you've been sick and you're getting well again. I mean, there's no better feeling to me. So I'm not, this is mostly checking. I mean, I've only really changed the adjustment on maybe 2 or 3. This one I am a little bit here. Because they're, for the most part, they're set correctly. I'm gonna, pretty soon, I'm gonna So some samples, I think, in the middle, some samples to see how the regulation's doing. There are so many things that you have to adjust on a piano that you learn to either do it efficiently or it's just not feasible to get it done in a reasonable amount of time and it's not your thing. You learn to kind of just do it quickly. And there's little tricks to that. Check that one again. So with my left hand, I'm kind of manipulating that jack through its motion that it's going to go through as if you played the key, pulling it out from under the knuckle, and then I'm seeing how it returns. Again, to reiterate, I got this piano. I didn't replace parts on this myself. We've just been hired to regulate it and voice it, get the dampers, replace the felts, and get them working as is. So that's kind of the story behind this, and just make it as good as we can. So I've only changed a handful of these, really. Okay, so that's set. Now, all my preliminary things that I want to be in place are in place so that I can set this blow distance, but I don't know, I may not do it that way. I may set what's called let off right now. Let off is the point at which the mechanism's no longer actively pushing a hammer towards the string. And there's an escapement, and so then the hammer's free to hit the string and bounce off it, instead of just going thump and blocking up against it. So I have a few different let-off tools used for Steinways. One ratchet is a ratcheting tool, and sometimes that comes in handy. So I'm just going to kind of go to middle C here. And I'm going to set let off really, really close to the strings. That was already really close. Set really, really close to the strings, you have a lot of control to play very, very softly without a misfire. But we're gonna do another adjustment here called drop. I'm just doing C and C sharp in the middle here as a samples to see where I want to set this distance so that everything works out right. Actually, that's pretty good where it already is right there. Maybe someone already set a sample here in the shop and was messing with this. So that's what I want to see. It drops a little bit from the strings at that point of let off, and let off, and it's consistent here. So now I'm going to see in the piano, I need some, after the key pushes down, the hammer hits the string and all that, you need a little bit of follow through, a little bit of space at the bottom of the key extra. And we call that aftertouch. And actually, the aftertouch is pretty darn good right here. So I'm going to see what that distance is. I'm going to put a number to it. I've got gauges of several different millimeter thicknesses, and I'm going to see what this is. Yes, there was a spec for this piano that was originally the case, but that's not the way you regulate a piano, because it may or may not work out to the specs, just depending on how things came together on the piano, the wear on the hammers, and so forth. But this looks to be right about its spec, about 46 millimeters here, which I forget exactly what the spec is for the piece. I could look it up, but it's not. I don't need to look it up to set this to regulate it right. I can tell by the way the key feels after it goes through let off and goes through its motion, how much extra push there is after that. I can tell when it's right. So this is right. So that's gonna. So we're gonna set everything at 46 millimeters. So I said I would check the chat on the hour and a half hour, see if anyone's hanging out and has any questions or things. But it doesn't look like anyone's here right now. Jeffrey Boyle, thanks for the comment there, Jeffrey. Ryan Silifants, this is Ryan from California. Great to see you back on YouTube. Thanks, Ryan and Jeffrey. I imagine people are busy tonight, though, but they stopped in, so thanks for tuning in there. Let's see. I also have a pizza coming, which is very important to me. So I want to see if anything has come through that way. Okay. Gonna reconnect there. Hopefully that reconnected okay. All right. So these notes that the let-off's been set on, they feel good. They feel like I have a lot of control right up until the point where the hammer's going to hit the string, all the way up there. So I'm going to set sample hammers all the way across. I'm going to preset a few all the way across the keyboard, and I like to set the ends of the sections and B's and E's. So I set quite a few samples of where these hammers are going to be. So I'm just going to go ahead and go through and do that now. I don't, if a B or an E is like right next to the edge, I don't set it again. I just set the edge at that point. But the reason we do this is because you think, well, don't you just need 2 points to define a line? But it's not a line. We're trying to set it exactly 46, in this case, 46 millimeters from the bottom of the string, and that string height across the scale varies. It curves. It's not a straight line. So if we don't set it with that curve, then our touch is not going to be right. So that's why. That's the why. Now, one's already exactly what I want. Some pianos you can't really look through where I was looking through to see the tops of the hammers, so I have to look down here, which isn't as ideal, but can be done. So most of these here I'm raising from where they were a bit. So I pinch the gauge in between the hammer. So for instance, in this case, between middle C, I pinch the gauge between the hammer and the string, and I hold the key down to keep it pinched there as I'm looking at the note next to it, which is a B. It's just the trick to using these gauges. One way to do it that I like. And I really can't see under there, so I've got to look through the top here, unfortunately. Sounds like some kind of movie theme, I don't know what. Let's see here. I'm already right where I want it. You can hear just how metallic sounding this piano is. And we need to fix that, of course. We need to make it sound good. Getting there. Normally this is a lot easier, but like I said, this piano, I can't look through the gap here between the stretcher and the top of the action and see the hammer. So it's a little more awkward, and a little more awkwardness to an already awkward job, you know. That. If you're sticking around to see it, and you're interested in voicing, this piano will undergo quite a drastic change for the good, for the better, as I get into some of the voicing here pretty quick. Interesting. So some of these, where I'm adjusting them to the height that I want here, they are, boy, just about resting on the rest felts down there. dead insect in the string, so I'll have to remedy that before we send the piano out. Okay, well, interesting. At this point, I need my capstan tool, and I'm going to get a soft cloth to lay across the top here. For a blanket. So I recently bought a big bolt of soft cotton material for use in the shop after the piano's refinished. I'm happy about that. Just keep them a little better protected once they've been worked on. If you see scuffs and things, those aren't scratches. That's just my sweaty palms working on this. But what we're going to do now is just bring the action up top where I can see those samples. And then I'm going to set all the hammers in between those samples to the proper height. Good. So I need my little tool here. That's clearly not one of my samples. All right, so I'm going to just start lining these up in between the samples that I set. Should work out fine. Key here is to remember what your samples were. Well, it's pretty obvious. So, it's getting to be fall here in Utah, but it's, boy, it's been a nice warm one. Just really mild weather, 70s, high 70s, you know, maybe 50 at night, maybe. And it's been, the warmer weather's kind of hung on a little longer than is typically the case here. A couple weeks ago, we had real vibrant, beautiful colors in the mountains from the trees turning red. But that only lasts, you know, that's pretty fleeting. Okay. So this will not look like a straight line on a lot of pianos. It's because the string height is a curve, like I was saying earlier, and we're setting it exactly off of that. So you see a little curvature of things as I smooth this out. Today I got to tune some nice pianos, a couple Spirio Model Bs and Steinway Upright. That was pretty nice. And then I've just raced back to the shop and to start putting all these pianos together. But I was just so tired because I've been working a lot this week trying to get these done. I'm seeing where I might have some work to do on making the tops of the hammers flat. I had another technician shape these hammers, and the shape was really beautiful from the side, but there's a few that aren't flat on the top that we'll have to kind of correct so that it hits all three strings at the same time. I'm not saying I would be perfect at that, but I'm just saying, just noticing what needs to be done, that's all. All right. Alrighty. So I'm curious, you know, what's your involvement here? What brought you to the channel if you're new? Or I guess even if you're not new and you've never mentioned it, you know, what caused you to turn something like this on? Since I've been putting out a lot of content on YouTube, I mean, I comb through a lot of the other channels in the industry, and I'll be honest, some hold my attention better than others for sure, and so this might be one of the most boring ones out there. But you know, but I remember doing jobs, you know, years ago, a number of years ago, and wanting to know, is there anything out on YouTube that has like a helpful tip? Maybe there's an easier way to do this, a better tool, and there just really wasn't anything. So that was part of the motivation for publishing content, was just to get some information out. There was a lot of things from kind of do-it-yourselfers and people who really didn't know a lot, but I could tell that a lot of people that were putting content out weren't the type of people that were doing this day in, day out for a living. So it was kind of, I thought, well, it'd be good to have better information for people so they can see what it's actually like to do this kind of work. Which, by the way, I love this kind of work. It's great. And it's more to life, certainly, but piano is a beautiful thing. Prepping a piano for someone who knows how to make it sing is just awesome. And it adds a lot. Some of these concerts are just so therapeutic, so inspiring to listen to, just to get lost in the music once in a while. So I take fulfillment in being a part of that in some way. Okay, something's wrong here with my parts. I'm moving one key and I'm seeing two hammers move. That's never good. So I gotta figure out what the deal is with that. It's just a spacing thing. So I'm gonna isolate, I believe it's just that the hammers are a little bit close together and the fuzz on the sides of the hammers is just kind of catching a little bit. In this case, I'm just going to file some of that fuzz off and see if that does the trick. Carefully file some of that, because I don't want to do violence here to the joint. And these hammers have already been spaced to the strings more or less where we want them. I could fudge it a little bit if I have to and still get what we want, but you know what? It's just not going to do it for me. I'm going to move that hammer over a little bit so there's more clearance, and then I'm going to travel it so it goes off to the side to hit the strings where we want. So I'm going to do there. There's some art gummed paper that's sticky on one side, and when you lick it, it gets sticky. And this is going to serve to space up that flange and tweak it over where I need it. It's going to reconnect. Hey, this reconnected, amazing. But sorry about that. Had to get a little delivery. It was very important. Greasy pizza and action parts don't mix, so taking a little break here. You know, I wonder if so when that disconnects and I reconnect it, I wonder if it actually reconnects to y'all. It looks like it does. Someone just joined, but you'll forgive me for taking a little break. I've been working all day today. It's been a long time, so. But yeah, I was curious, who's out and about tonight. It's kind of warm in the shop right now. This pizza's really good. Yeah. But I'm excited to get this thing done here in a minute. I'm getting myself a napkin here. It's getting warmer here. I'm going to turn down the AC. Turn up the AC? How do you say that? When you want it to be colder, do you say, I'm going to turn up the AC or I'm going to turn it down? Because technically you turn the thermostat down, but the power, the AC goes up. The activity of the AC goes up. I think turn down the AC is proper, but you tell me. These are important questions to define. This pizza is probably one of the best pizza places near here. It's called Big Daddy's, and I don't know where I think it's a chain for sure. I don't know where all it exists, but they're super combo. I mean, it's got artichoke hearts, green olives, all the meats and things. It's really good. Show you if you haven't had your dinner or breakfast yet or whatever. Look, that's pretty good. It's a good pizza. The crust is really good. You're my witness. So far, I've only had 2 pieces. So we'll see how we can keep that down through the night here. Just rinse off my hands. I'll be right back working on that piano. Clean hands, very important for working on pianos. Clean hands. Let's see, I should turn on the chat if anyone has anything to say. No? But I appreciate you being around here. Okay. Get rid of our pizza, our sideshow there. And so the next step, I'm not done leveling out this hammer line. I've got a little bit to do on the treble there. So I'll finish doing that. We were going to space over a hammer that was rubbing against its neighbor up there. So let us do that. So there's a little bit of room on the left of this hammer for me to move it. just a little bit. And I might space the other one just a little bit. And now, you know what? It's still, something's still rubbing. But I don't think it's the, difficult. Alright, I'm going to get a brand new razor blade out and cut some of that fluff off the side of the hammer if I can. See if this works at all. Yeah, sometimes some of these Steinway hammers from this era where these came from when these parts were put on, when they slice them, you get a little bit of fuzz, and it can stick out enough to interact with its neighbor hammer. Kind of giving it a shave here. Quite literally, right? And let's see if that did anything for me. Hey! I'm going to do the other one too, just for extra safety. Hopefully I can do this without doing something stupid here with the razor blade. Just giving that guy a shave. Okay. There, now we got some clearance. And my guess is alignment-wise that'll be just fine still. So I'm not going to travel it over or anything. Okay, now I'll continue setting that, setting its hammer line between the samples. And these are fairly new parts that someone's put on at some point. And I get that impression, even though we reshaped the hammers have wear on them, but, you know, that being said, I think the wear on these parts overall is not very much. They still act kind of new. A little bit here. So I'm just cleaning out this line here. See another one that I need to cheat over and shave a little bit. Shave again. Great, now those are independent of each other. It's important to be independent. Okay. Let's do out this little bump here. Wow, these two are also, you might want to do something weird on these, like iron them or something. I might want to do something here. Just get rid of any drag that might be there, you know. What's going on with you all? Where you at in life? Where you at with pianos? I think we've had any milestones in our family, but I don't think of anything right off. But things are going well for us. Just having to work a lot right now. It's a blessing to have work, for sure. So while I've not been filming, we've been busy in here in the shop. We've kind of started doing soundboard services, which I didn't offer in the past. So we've tooled up a little bit, a little continuing education to get into soundboard installation. I'm not really interested in making boards. We're not tooled up to do that, and there's plenty of people who can make a board already for me and duplicate a board really nice. So, I'm content right now just to get our feet wet and get used to putting those in. So we had a run of 3 Steinway O's to do, which was kind of nice having the same model one after the other to kind of iron out kinks and become used to things. And one of the pianos was one that I own and probably will sell, but it seemed to go really well. We used old Duke pianos in Quebec to supply our boards, and I use them for pin block material always. I just think they have access to really good wood. Okay, so more or less have our blow distance set here. We can always tweak something further if we wanted, but now I'm going to set the let off all the way across the piano. And I like to do that with by feel and sound. You don't prick your neck or anything. You don't have to put a gauge on each one. Sometimes I'll do that if I'm putting on new parts. I'll do a gauge of some type. That's not really necessary here. So we've got our sample cell ready. Some of these are quite far away. So I basically push the pedal to get the damper out of the equation. I push the key gently down to the point of resistance, and then I push through. And I can push through either faster or slower. And at a certain point, I want to be able to hear that hammer hit the string. And I want it to be really close. So if I just kind of fine tune that in, I make them all the same, basically. In some cases, I might leave a little more room for the bass strings. But I make it so that even when I push very, very lightly, it's still hitting the string. And that equates to about, I'm probably putting these hammers about a millimeter or 2 away off the string. With new parts, I'll maybe make it a little further away. But I've been experimenting with really running lead off just really nice and close. And you can't always do that if the piano goes somewhere with a different, with different conditions and something might change and all of a sudden it's too close. But the benefits to the touch and the repetition are just great if you can get it really nice and close. And I used to be afraid of hammers bobbling, but I find that actually if I set it really close, they don't. As long as I have enough drop and the springs aren't crazy, and the checking works well. So I imagine you can hear that when it starts to hit. I mean, these hammers are really far off the strings. The notes that I've done, they speak really easily. It feels really nice under the fingers to have let off really close. And as I mentioned, it repeats really, really well usually when let off's close. I mean, in tandem with everything else. But it is a key factor, I think. And the sound will have more intensity to it. These are brighter right now, but that's just the relative hardness there that I'll have to address. But the tone is just more. It's just a better tone when it's nice and close. And I mean, you have to needle it correctly, to voice it right. But put my chair here lower so I don't have to break my back here. It'd be nice if I could do it without looking, but my ratchet tool gets caught on the little eye screws. So I lose my place once it pops off and I have to look just to make sure I'm on the right one that I'm adjusting. And this is making quick work of setting lead off. It's very comfortable. But granted, we have the other parameters set pretty close. So we've got the dip right where I'm going to have it. We've got the blow distance where I have. So that makes it so that it's easier to set the let off in this way and get consistent results. Sometimes I just kind of can't help myself just trying it out, as I adjust it. Because it feels fun to feel how the touch improves and whatnot. Oh, I'm still slouching, aren't I? This is as low as my chair goes in. This chair, Well, I've got a lower chair. Maybe. I'm going to try that one. here. Feels a little better on the back. Some people will play it, they'll push to that point of resistance and play through. And they'll respond to the volume of the note, the way it hits the note. I think you have to have everything, really close to, like, already regulated, and that's kind of refining it and voicing and all that really close. I don't know, it's just not something I've done enough to feel totally comfortable with yet. I kind of more alternate between pushing it faster and lighter, and making sure that it's not too close when I push really light, but that with very little effort, then it will hit the string. Like that. Honestly, I've seen some pianos that were really virtually blocking, but you could still play them. They would still escape, and honestly, it felt fine. It felt pretty good in a way. I've also played pianos where the let off was far away and it sounded fine, but you just sacrifice a little bit of extra control and when you're playing really softly, especially. The voicing on this just sounds so ugly right now. It's going to be a great change when I start voicing it. Sometimes in these high treble ones, you don't think it's hitting and it's actually blocking already. If you're just starting out to try this way, it's good to look, like, set it where you think it's right and then look and see what happens. And just kind of go back and forth a little bit and kind of acclimate your sense of touch on this. So lately my thing has been, okay, set dip where I want it. Kind of more or less a determined depth. And I only kind of vary that by very little, maybe 20,000th either side of an inch, deeper, shallower. Some pianos you can't do this, but the pianos I'm working on I can. So I'll kind of set that dip where I want it first, and then set the let off really close like this where I want it, and then set the blow distance, which is the hammer at rest, the distance between that and the strings. Set it where it needs to be so that with those other two factors you still have some aftertouch. So in other words, usually some pianos that means you might have to have a smaller blow distance than the spec sheet might say. But to me that's fine, because I think it makes for a little bit lighter touch and faster. So I don't mind that at all. I think it's a good thing, you know, in high performance settings. May not work for every piano. You know, you just have to kind of feel it out. So, oh, it's 8 o'clock. I'll check the chat if anyone wants to post any question or anything or comments on there. Just really good for me to stand up here break and once in a while anyway. It doesn't matter what note you do first or whatever when you're sitting let off, right? You can do whatever order you want. I just started in the middle where my samples were and I just went up and then I'll go to the middle and go down. I tend to do that with a lot of the adjustments like setting dip or I don't know, it just seems to work okay. You could go from the top all the way down, you could go from the bottom all the way up, doesn't matter. As soon as I finish this note number 88 here, I'll check the chat. Probably with the AC running right now, it's harder to hear these high ones. And sometimes it becomes like just a knock against the string and you don't hear the actual pitch. And you know, if you've gotten too close, you'll know pretty quick. If you play kind of softly, you'll be like, oh, that's just wrong. Something's weird there. It's hitting the string first before it's escaping. Yeah, now with not very much effort, I can project out really easily up here on the higher notes. I just feel like it's right under my control for little trills and stuff, you know? It feels like it follows my finger really nicely, the key. It's really predictable and it's nice. It feels very efficient. I'm going to go ahead and set the let off at the other one, but I'll check and see if anyone put anything on the chat here. I know I haven't done this in a while, so people probably didn't see the live comment, but okay, so here's a comment. Ryan said he recently started learning how to tune pianos from a technician at Steinway, which is awesome, doing aural tuning. It's difficult. He says he managed to tune, I guess you all, if you're watching this, can read the chat, but I can't, right? But I managed to tune a Steinway Model B with only a few screw-ups in the low bass, which I'm pretty proud of. Good. I would just correct you there. Don't say screw-ups. It's just one flavor of tuning that you did that you might want to alter for next time. Just a healthy attitude on it. Anyway, but that's great, Ryan. I've been having a lot of fun tuning by ear. I just think it's, in so many settings, it just opens up a lot of you can go faster in the end in a lot of circumstances. You can do things that would be awkward if you were only tied to the machine. But all right, where's my tool here? So here we go. Just keep doing let off here. Next, I'm going to do drop. From the middle to the top to the bottom, it's going to have a slightly different feel. You know, I think when you're setting this let off. The other thing is the way I regulate you know, the dip right now on the sharp piece, may not be where it's going to end up. And so it can feel a little different that way. You just have to work around it. Yeah, like here in the middle is a good place to say like, okay, how am I doing? And that was just right, what I was expecting to do. Excuse me. Yeah, I can really feel as I'm pushing through. The person who taught me, they call it the shelf. I like that. You know, when I'm pushing through this shelf, I can definitely tell where the sharp keys are not, where some of them are off. You know, it feels too shallow or too deep after it escapes. So I'll go through and in a second, and I'll set that correctly. But I'm having to change it a lot. Like let off is way low right now. And with these let-off buttons, they have kind of an indentation in them, and so I have to kind of check after each turn because one turn can make either no difference or it can make a big difference because they already have kind of an impression on them a little bit. Some people will iron them, I think, something like that. Try and level them out. Some people will replace them, but I just work with it. It's not that big deal for me. So I guess what I'm saying is old let-off buttons aren't a big deal as long as the screw is intact. A little far on that one.
this kind of no look method, which I mean, there I kind of checked, is really handy with Model Ds because you really can't see things very well on some of the sections at all. So, you know, if you get the opportunity to regulate a Model D, then you'd be like, oh, this is another reason why Hiram does it this way and other people. That's what I remember thinking that. I remember thinking like, oh, this is a nice way of doing it, but I can still see everything. But then when I got on a D, I was like, oh, yeah, now I see, because this is a little hard. There's no way to do it otherwise. And you could stick a magnet strip in here. You could do that too if you wanted. But this is, you know, when you're kind of doing a second regulation or third or subsequent regulation after some parts have already been put on, and you're just doing it for the second time of the piano's life or whatever, you're a lot closer to where you need to be. Things are more consistent, so it's not too bad to just tweak it a little bit. Whereas when you're starting from scratch, then it's nice to have the magnet or some kind of pinch gauge to set it off with. Okay, almost done with let off here. So as I push through the shelf, when I teach people this, it's like, no, okay, go really light. You push the pedal down, get the damper out of the way. Go really lightly, right to where you feel resistance, and then push through. You know, and it should kind of pop and. You feel a little kind of pop as what you're feeling is you're feeling the jack hitting the button and slipping out from under the knuckle. You're also feeling the repetition lever, the end of it hit the drop screw button. Well, not button, but hit the drop screw basically. So those 2 points of resistance create that shelf, and then you push through that. And you see how much key travel there is as you're pushing through. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to even out my touch as I push through the shelf. I want it to feel the same from naturals to sharps, and from naturals to naturals. We set these naturals with a gauge, so they should be really close, but there can still be differences. Voice really bright right now. That'll change a lot. So I'm gonna get some. I like to use what they call forceps to pull the punchings out. I'm probably mostly going to be pulling punchings out, but I might be putting some in. But okay, someone's been in my bag. So some of these tools are already out somewhere. They're in this bin. Don't see them yet. Must have been taken out for a previous project by someone and either returned to the wrong spot or whatnot. Yeah, where did those things go? Gotta think who was using these tools last.
who it was? This happens every time in the shop. I'm like, that's it. Who put my tool somewhere? And it was me that put it in the wrong spot. So anyway, gotta be slow to wrath here. Okay, so I'm gonna push the damper down. I'm gonna just go through the shelf. Those all feel pretty good so far. This one might be a little deeper. Another thing is when you push through that shelf and you just hold your finger there lightly with the key down and look at the hammer and then push harder, you'll see the hammer rise a little bit more. It's because you're squishing the cloth punching that's under there. So you can see how much you can call it a second hammer rise. You can see how much second hammer rise there is. And that can also kind of help you pinpoint if one of these if you need to remove punchings or add them to the sharps to make them feel the same as the white piece. So far those, I'm actually really liking that. So I must have noticed the differences more in the base. Because there were some differences on some of these. I'm actually going to take one blue punching, which is 10,000ths. Take one out of middle C actually. Because it felt a little shallower than my other one. When this B flat feels really shallow. It's like a feeling like you're trying to step down a step and you get stuck. And so we're just making these all feel the same that way. And the result is a real nice, consistent cut. Again, the reason we set, most of the time in the shop here we regulate and we save. We might rough in the sharps with a gauge or something to guess based off a sample how deep it should be. But it may or may not be just right. So we always kind of go back over it to make sure. Quite a bit out of that one, maybe 30 thousandths. So that one was, some of them can be quite off. So in about 10 minutes, I'll check the chat if anyone has any questions or comments they want me to read over. I can't see it here. It's just on my phone today, right? This live streaming. I do want to save up for a really sweet mic system that'll enable you to really hear the pianos just as we hear them a lot closer anyway. But it's kind of an expensive system. I figure probably about $3,200 or so. You know, and where I'm not making a lot of income off YouTube, you know, it's hard to swallow that pill right now, but am I doing pitiful begging? So please give me money. I didn't put any links on this video, but you can on some of my others. I thought, well, maybe people will just kind of donate so that, you know, to help with production costs, and that didn't really, you know, it's funny, people don't really give a lot unless they have to. You know, for the most part, so which makes sense. But what I was saying on some of my videos, I put a link for like
a Venmo or a PayPal me kind of thing, where people wanted to donate a little bit to the production cost, they could. Probably most of you are like, why would I want to do that? It's your problem, buddy. So, which is fine. But at any rate, I do want to get a better sound system for miking, both myself and the pianos. Sometimes the clock punching won't get back under, and you wonder if something feels really wrong all of a sudden. Just check for that if it's under there somewhere. Take a little one like this. White one. White key, that is. So this doesn't take too long to kind of refine the dip on the sharps. I dropped my punching in there again. So I've said it before, but most of regulation is the key travel, how far that key goes down. That's the biggest factor in the touch of the piano. So when that's even, 70% of your job done. Because the key, the hammer moves about between 4.5, 5 times farther for every unit that the key moves. So the key doesn't have to be off by much to change the touch. Just little changes, tiny little changes in the key make a big difference in the touch. Whereas the hammers, you change how much that changes, you don't feel that as much. Because it's the exact opposite. You're affecting the key 5 times less, than you are with whatever you're changing on the hammer. I wonder if whoever, because I delegate some of the tasks here in the shop to the other technicians and employees, and I wonder if who was setting the dip on these did the treble sharp keys with the gauge and just forgot that they didn't do the bass. It's possible. Almost there. These are really just kind of finishing touches of the regulation. From here, there's only a couple things to kind of tweak and check. Make sure it works right. So yeah, a lot of these taking 20, 30 thousandths out of. So that's how much they had to be changed. Okay, so that's that. Just get rid of my trash here. Let me go check that chat and see if anyone has anything they want to say on there here pretty quick. I guess we got a few minutes. I'll let you think about it for a few minutes. Regulation sets the stage for a nice voicing, even though we're far from a nice voicing right now. But we're getting, like, what we did with the let off there really evened out the strength of the scale compared to what it was. There were some sections that sounded kind of anemic and others that were stronger. So now I'm going to go through, now that I've set let off, which is that upper limit, and I've set how far the keys go down and everything. So now I'm going to set this thing called drop, how far the hammer, well, the way I'm going to set it is I'm going to look at how far the hammer drops after escapement. Now, of course, when you play the piano, it doesn't act like this, but it represents a safety gap that's going to be there to allow the hammer to break free from the string and come away from it so that everything can reset. So then I'm just going to set all these even, which should be about, meaning that they're going to move all about the same amount. I'm not going to go into the crazy details of it. You can check out my the Prepping a Steinway series that I have on the channel. Prepping a new Steinway, we talk about the different steps of regulation and kind of what they do, and take a closer look with the camera at all the different parts. You can check that out. That's with Josh Wright. He's a pianist. And he kind of goes through and asks me some questions about what I'm doing with the regulation, the voicing, all those things, and why, and what it affects, and things like that, from the pianist perspective. You see, more or less, by turning the screw, I'm kind of, after the hammers all fall that I push, they should more or less be in a straight line if everything else is correct in your regulation. There might be some slight differences, and that's okay. It's not always worth like going back unless something's way off with the let off. Like, it's not worth revisiting things at this point to me, usually. But I've been doing it a long time, so usually it's close enough, where I know it's going to work really well. Okay. Just kind of trimming these all up, and what this is going to do, this is actually going to make the touch feel a little bit lighter.
and more consistent, and just like the key just goes down like just really nicely, it's going to decrease the resistance that the pianist feels on the as they're pushing down the key. In this case, it's going to decrease the resistance because right now the drop is for the most part excessive because I've raised the point where the hammer goes up higher now before it escapes, and so it falls back down further. So I said I was going to check the chat, and I will, but let me just finish setting drop, and then I'll do that. So if you do have any burning questions or comments that you want me to read out loud or check out, because otherwise I'm not going to see them, later on, since it's a live stream. So you can see this is lower. Now I turn the screw up, the hammer goes up, and then it makes it so they're all kind of falling the same distance. Now, had I not set all the parameters that I did consistently already, how far the key goes down, the let off being consistent. Now this one, the let off is going a little higher than these others, and I can tell that at this point. So I can go through now, I can change let off now without even checking it in the piano and know that it's going to be more consistent. So you can kind of refine that distance from the strings that let off is when you're doing this, if everything else is set right. But again, your key dip has to be all consistent, your blow distance has to be consistent, and let off has to be really consistent. Then when you have all those three in line, then when you're setting drop like this, and so let's say you want it to drop like, if you put a number to it like 2 millimeters or something, well, when you set that where it's dropping that amount, it's going to then make all your hammers basically in a straight line, because they're all doing the same thing and at the same point in time as they raise, and it's just a real nice feel. Then the resistance that's going to be introduced to the action as it hits these different buttons and things, it'll be consistent from note to note. You see that one dropped more. Now as I trim it up where I want it, a good distance for drop is maybe a couple millimeters. The Steinway spec I think says like a 1/16 of an inch, but I feel like either I don't know what a 1/16 of an inch really looks like, or that seems a little bit not enough for me for things to work well. But I don't know. I could be wrong on that. But nevertheless, I kind of just think about 2 millimeters most of the time. If this one's dropping less, that's kind of a sample I set, but now I'm going to decide to have that drop a little more than what I initially set those samples at. So in and of itself, this step isn't a big deal to adjust. If everything else is in place. The hard thing is just going through the patience to get everything else foundationally really right, like key leveling, how far the keys go down, let off, getting it consistent. The big one is key travel, how far the keys go down, or key dip. That's the biggie. Okay. I remember watching a Yamaha video and watching this step and just being like mesmerized. I don't know why, but just seeing like, wow, it all lines up just like ducks in a row. It just looks so great. And it is. It's very pleasing, and it's pleasing to the touch too. It's pleasing to the pianist. So it represents also, you know, you're nearing the end of your regulation. You're kind of completing the final step. So it feels really good to get to that point. That might be a little much drop on that one. You know, if I say, oh, I kind of went off one way or another, I'll tweak it a little bit and just kind of mend it back. All right. These hammers, they look like dogs. I'm not sure what happened to the shape on the top of these, but I'm going to be fighting to get these to have a nice surface on the top to hit all 3 strings at the same time. But we'll get it. Interesting to see kind of, you know, what's going on in the economy and, you know, as far as what I see too, as far as jobs coming in for rebuilds and things like that. And it seems like it slowed down for a little bit, and then right now it seems like people are kind of just going all in on things, projects that they've been waiting for. They're kind of panning out now. So I don't know how unique that is though, because it always seems like fall is kind of a busier time. With the rebuilds, it always seems like I'm doing a lot in the fall and spring. So a lot of what I'm doing here is by feel too, like I'm feeling as I push the key through this motion, this stroke, that it feels the same, you know. It should feel just nice and crisp as it goes through that shell. You have to kind of practice pushing with the same weight too, and the same kind of hold force on the key after you push through, to be able to set it nicely. So I could push like one really hard and one like softer, and then they don't look even, you know. But you have to kind of test them evenly. Okay, almost done here with the drop. From there, it's just making sure it works right, maybe refining my checking distance and my springs a little bit. But I have to be careful with the springs. If I change them much, then it kind of affects everything I've done, and it could make something that was working nicely not work. So I have to be judicious about changing the springs at this point. And I'm intentionally leaving them a little strong, in the hopes of just a responsive, fast action repeating. Now I have no idea who's going to play this piano. They could be at the level where none of this even matters. I don't know, but you know, it's a great piano. It deserves to be adjusted right, so that if someone who is a little more advanced gets on it, you know, it's going to do what it's supposed to do. He's looking good already. Trimming them up a little bit. I always like the way the action feels after this step. I think, but drop. Okay, so we're just kind of playing it for a sec, see how it feels. I'll look at the checking while I'm playing it through the strings here. Oh, I was going to check the chat. Let me do that. if there's anything going down. So Ryan's asking, when I was learning to do aural tuning, do I have days where I felt like I really started to get good at it, and then the next day felt like I didn't? Yeah, definitely. Next day feels like you don't know anything. Yeah, your ear, your brain, your headspace can really affect how things turn out. The piano you're on, um, and that just evens out more and more, and you get more confidence when you do it a lot in different situations, I think. Um, yeah, but just don't ever feel like an idiot. Um, don't let yourself go there. My response to that I feel like helps the tuning is to just back off. Stop listening so close. Sometimes I'll get listening too close, and it's just deceptive and laborious. And then I just sit back and then just kind of listen to it. It's like, oh, just keep it simple, like I'm tuning unisons kind of thing. And this is really nice. The checking is a little bit different now, especially on the black notes. So I'm going to even that checking out, and that's going to even out some inconsistencies that I'm feeling. And the checking was the height was already set previously, but where I changed the dip on some of the notes, it's going to change the height of the checking. These are not my favorite back checks in the world that are on this piano. And that's going to lower my expectation as far as what's possible in consistency of setting it. But again, that's kind of outside the scope of this job to make any improvements there beyond what the parts will allow me to do. I've learned not to fight parts. Don't fight quality of parts. Just lower your expectation and do the best you can to get it to feel good and work right. Like, don't fuss over the fact that, like, oh, I just can't get that line to look just right, because sometimes the quality and condition of the part makes it impossible, actually. So, let's see. And checking's one that's not easy to set, I don't feel like. Some people go like this to try and get it consistent, but how much you're holding down, how hard you're holding down the key makes a difference, because then it'll pop the back of that up higher or lower. That's really hard to get a feel for what it's going to do in the piano. So I kind of do like a mezzo piano swing, and then I push not really crazy hard, just a little bit, just comfortably, and try and be really consistent with that pressure that I'm doing. And then I'll do it many times to kind of reveal if one is really high or lower. I'm going to try and go on ignore the camera mode a little bit and just work, hoping that that'll kind of bring out the pacing that I would normally use when I'm working like this. Hope you don't mind, but I'll still check the chat once in a while and we'll engage that way. If you have any questions about what you're seeing, just ask. It's nice and peaceful when that AC shuts off. I only have it set. I have it set to like 76, but it keeps cranking on. It must be like really warm tonight here. So